The Edmonton Oilers pick up a 3-0 victory in the regular season finale to set the tone heading into the playoffs against the LA Kings for the fourth straight year on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Thursday regular season finale edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis, 1 year in as host of Locked On Oilers, my third year with the Locked On Podcast Network. And I want to thank everyone that's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, a whole lot to get to. The game itself is what it was. Neither team really needed this game, no real urgency, but Connor McDavid's milestone, we'll talk that, hitting the 100-point mark for an eighth time, joining some of the most rarefied air in the history of hockey. We'll talk a little bit about the Oilers, just trying to find some sense of stabilization and some normalcy ahead of the playoffs, a firm reset. And we'll tie a bow on this episode, setting the narrative for the playoffs ahead. So at the outset, I was very curious to see who was going to play in this game tonight. Chris Knobloch earlier in the week had said a lot of the guys who sat out the Monday night game against the Kings were going to be day-to-day, questionable. Some could be available tonight, and then most of them would be available once the first-round series against the Kings, which we do not know as of the time of this recording, whether that will be Sunday or Monday. I would assume it's going to be Monday, but I am not positive going off of that. But to continue, when the lineup came out today, you saw Max Jones get in there, you saw Dionne get in there, and no Darnell Nurse, suspended last game of the season for the cross-check on Quinton Byfield on Monday, which, look, if he gets suspended for a game that didn't really matter, ultimately it doesn't matter a whole lot, so I'm not that worried that Nurse missed a game. But I was curious to see whether Connor, Leon, Stuart Skinner, whether those guys would give it a go tonight. Zach Hyman, Jake Wallman, if any of those guys would be inclined to give it a go, because this game didn't matter. There was nothing the Oilers could have done tonight that would have changed their playoff situation. No matter what happens, they were going to be on the road starting Sunday or Monday against the LA Kings. And Leon didn't play, Hyman didn't play, Wallman didn't play. Again, the Oilers having to go with a light lineup, only 5 defensemen, Dionne drawing 23 minutes, Evan Bouchard only 22, Brett Kulak almost 28 full minutes. So Chris Knobloch very consciously managing the minutes as evenly as possible and trying to reduce the workload for their big guns. And this game was competitive. I would say the Sharks did a reasonable job of slowing this game down. Ultimately, really 2-0, the empty net goal at the end of the game there, making it 3-0. But as far as the game itself, what doesn't matter a whole lot, but the matter of the fact is Connor McDavid wanted to play in this game. Now, whether the Oilers wanted him to reach the 100-point milestone or that was a McDavid thing, we're not going to know. And Connor would tell you the milestones, the records, the awards, they're nice. They're fuel, to quote the Timothée Chalamet speech at, I think that was the Golden Globes. That might have been maybe not the Emmys. The Emmys is TV. Whatever award show it was, he won Best Actor. I think it was the Golden Globes. He said something along the lines of, I want to be one of the greats. This is not telling me I am one of the greats, but this is a little bit of fuel to keep going. And I think that's the way great competitors look at individual awards and regular season results. Of course, you want to hit these milestones. You want to win awards. That's part of building the legacy. That's part of building the lore. And it's part of driving that fuel, because deep down, at this point, it is about getting a cup. And that's the beginning and the end of the conversation. He's got a Richard, he's got an Art Ross, he's got Hartz, he's got Ted Lindsay's now, excuse me. I went to the old player's MVP name. Connor McDavid has accomplished pretty much all there is to accomplish in the regular season. And it's important to not lose sight of that. And on tomorrow's show, you'll hear me and Eddie Garcia of Locked On Kings talk about this from the Kings' perspective, the idea of, well, don't you want to appreciate the regular season you just had? You had a great season. And for Connor, injuries, suspension, not the easiest year by any means, definitely wear and tear of the playoffs of last year, the year before that. The Oilers have played the second most playoff games of any team over the last 3 years. You think about going to the conference final 3 years ago, you beat LA, then Calgary, you lose in the conference final. You beat LA, you lose in the second round. Then last year, you go all the way to a game 7 of a Stanley Cup final, and those miles accumulate. And they don't go on the odometer in the same way a regular season game does. Those are like mile and a halves. Like if we were doing dog years, that's how playoff games age you. And Connor, to his credit, or to the Oilers' credit, whoever you want to give more credit for him dressing in this game, wanted to get him out there. They wanted him to get this one last point. He was sitting on 99 coming into the night tonight. I think it was very conscious. It was a very conscious decision to not play him against the Kings and risk shenanigans, because I don't think the Kings would go out of their way to intentionally try and injure the face of the league, because the NHL would have thrown the book at them. Gary Bettman would have brought an act of God down on whatever Kings player injured Connor McDavid right before the playoffs started. But Connor went out there, he picked up that 100th point, and he joined some of the rarest air there is in all of the NHL history. When we're talking about more than 100 years of the NHL now, there are 3 other players who have ever hit this milestone, the 800-point seasons. Gretzky, Lemieux, Marcel Dionne. That's good company. That is the type of company you want to keep. It brings me to one of the old NHL ads. I believe it was 2017, maybe 2018. It's narrated by Liev Schreiber, who does Hard Knocks and has one of the most recognizable voices imaginable. But it's an ad centered around legacy players, big names like Rocket Richard, Marty Brodeur, Gretzky, Messier, Bobby Clark, some of the most iconic players in the history of the sport. And the premise of the commercial is that you spend your life trying to make your name something. And one of the points that ad makes is your name eventually becomes part of the company you keep, and the players you are closest associated with, that becomes a part of your legacy, whether that's a teammate like Gretzky and Messier, whether that's a contemporary, a rival, if you want to talk about it in terms of maybe Sid and Ovi. I think you could safely say those guys are very connected to each other. If you wanted to say Eichel and McDavid, or Austin Matthews and McDavid, contemporaries who were in direct competition with each other for that big dog title. If this were boxing and they were all competing for that world title, those are the contenders. And Connor, to his credit, in what has been a difficult and frustrating season, once again hit what is a high threshold here. We are not talking about a very attainable milestone. For the most part, this is rare air to hit that 100-point threshold. Even now, when scoring is reasonably up comparison where it was 10 years ago, we had 5 players hit the 100-point threshold this season. Kucherov, who's going to win the Art Ross with 121, McKinnon with 116, Draisaitl and Pasternak both with 106, Mitch Marner with 100, and then Connor McDavid with 100. In what has been a down and difficult season, I would not say a disappointing season, but I would say a down season in terms of production, McDavid is still tied for 5th in points in the entire league. That is one of the most gifted players I have ever had the great privilege of watching. We are going to take our first break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. And when we come back, we are going to dive into what the next couple of days are going to look like, trying to get a handle on it, resetting, and getting ready for what is going to be an arduous journey should the Oilers get where they want to go. On today's edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. The NBA playoffs are underway with the play-in tournament, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. And right now, When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easily, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into individual player props. You guys know I am a Knicks fan. I am I will say I am tentatively nervous for this series against the Pistons. I think the Pistons play pretty good defense, and the vibes haven't been right with the Knicks this year, so I'm a little worried about that. And one thing I love doing on FanDuel is riding player props. You can do things like made three, steals, blocks, rebounds, assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for your chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on today's Victory Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers, recapping what was a lackluster hockey game. And very similarly to what I said after the game on Monday night against the Kings, this game didn't matter. Especially after Monday, I expected the Oilers to no-show this game again. And I do think Connor being in the lineup makes a difference because he is the type of player who's going to drag his teammates into the game no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances. He's not phoning it in out there, and that by default is going to drag guys in. I do want, and we are going to get to the reset and what the next few days look like in a second, but I really like the idea of playing Connor Brown and Jeff Skinner with Connor McDavid. And I was doing my series prep. I was doing my playoff prep. I am going to do a preview of all 8 first-round playoff series between Thursday and Saturday over the course of the next few days over on my Liberty Blue feed over on YouTube. And I do encourage you to check it out if you want a little more of me talking about hockey around the league. One of the things that really jumped out to me when I went under the hood looking at the Oilers and just how they create offense, they have a lot of guys who either only pass the puck, and then they have a lot of guys who only shoot the puck. And that makes them a little bit one-dimensional offensively in terms of how they create offense, because when you're overly reliant on one or two guys shooting when they're out there, defenses can start to cue in on that. And I do think the Oilers have had that issue at points this year where it just feels like the offense has had a hard time finding goals consistently. And I don't think it's for a lack of talent. I think if anything, it's having talent that kind of overlaps with each other. And I'm pulling it up right now because I want to quote this accurately. But when you look at the Oilers on a scatter plot. So I'm subscribed to, it's called all3zones.com, and this tracks microstats, things like zone entries, chance creation, assists, shots to assists to shots on goal rather. And when you look at scoring chances and then scoring chance assists, a good chunk of the Oilers lineup produces both at a below average rate. And Connor and Leon are in rarefied air. You know, you look at this scatter plot, they are in the same group as Nathan McKinnon, as Artemi Panarin, as Matt Duchene, which is funny to see, but that's because he plays fewer minutes, as Kucherov, as Jack Hughes, as Jesper Bratt, as Braden Point, some of the best players in the entire NHL. And because of that, they are able to drag guys along, you know, in that quadrant where it's above average for scoring chance assists and scoring chances. You have Jeff Skinner, you have Victor Arvidsson, and you have Zach Hyman. Everybody else is below average at least one component. And Connor Brown and Vasily Podkolzin, they just shoot. They just let it fly. Jeff Skinner, a little bit of both, but he's more inclined to shoot the puck first. But if you give Connor two bona fide shooters, that's going to make him more dangerous. And I do think Zach Hyman's going to slide back in there once we determine he's healthy. There was a bit of conjecture as to whether or not he was going to play tonight after Monday, but the Oilers erred on the side of caution, which is fine. I have no qualms about Hyman sitting, getting extra rest. But the next day and a half, 2 days are entirely about getting everyone ready to go. And there are going to be some awkward conversations. And It is really important that if you are Chris Knobloch, and by extension Stan Bowman, because I do think he gets a voice in this conversation as well, I think a good general manager has a pulse on the lineup decisions. And I'm not saying they get to make decisions, especially when we're talking about building the lineup outward. I do think if you disagree with what your coach is doing, you need to have a handle on that and have diplomatic means of talking that out. But that's a different conversation maybe for something in the summer as far as what a good chain of command looks like. But there are a handful of guys who are going to be told they're not going to be in the lineup come Sunday or Monday. I'm looking at Max Jones, who picked up his first goal as an Oiler tonight just by virtue of what we've seen over the last handful of weeks. I think more likely than not, Kasperi Kapanen probably gets bumped from the lineup as well. And then it's dicey. I envision Troy Stetcher coming back in. I envision Jake Wallman coming back in. And that probably jettisons two guys out. Nurse coming back in from suspension, of course. But you'll get Stetcher, Emerson, and Nurse back in. You'll see Kulak. You'll have Bush, who played tonight. And top 10 in scoring for a defenseman in what's bad year. I'll take that every single time as far as Bouchard goes. But if you're Chris Knobloch, you want to sit down with all of these guys and tell them, I know this sucks that we're going to play guys who haven't played in Evander Kane's case all year, and in Trent Frederick's case, who may or may not be available for game one, which we'll talk about in a second. But you're going to have to sit those guys down and give them the pinch hitter conversation that just because you're not playing game one doesn't mean I don't need you to be ready for game two. I need you to be as focused and prepared to go as can be. Guys are going to get hurt. That is the nature of playoff hockey, and we are going to need you at some point. We might not need you tonight for game one, but if Frederick's ankle flares up, if Evander Kane's conditioning isn't good enough, if one of the bottom six forwards gets dinged up, if a third pair defenseman gets dinged up, I need you ready to contribute on a moment's notice. And I don't want hesitation. I don't want a lack of confidence. You are not playing because we think you aren't one of our 12 best forwards, 6 best D. And that's not an indictment of you. That's because we have a good team. The fact that the Oilers have 14, 15, maybe 16 forwards, if you want to include Derek Ryan as well, to pick from for 12 spots, that's a luxury. And the Oilers do have decisions to make. And as for Trent Frederick, Evander Kane, on Wednesday morning, Chris Knobloch had said they do envision all of the players that are on long-term injured reserve, other than Matthias Ekholm, being able to contribute at some point in this series. And so that might not mean game one, but it could mean at some point down the road. And I do think more likely than not, you will see Evander Kane for game one. The way he was talking the other day, I think he's ready to go. It's simply a matter of, is he going to be cleared to compete? As for Frederick, it might be another game or two. The injury re-aggravation is concerning. Draisaitl, I will play. Hyman will play. Jake Wallman will play. Klingberg, I doubt it. I think Klingberg is probably the 7th or 8th defenseman if you want to look at this in a favorable light for him. I just don't think he's played enough hockey for you to really count on him in really anything resembling a top 4 role. If you need him to go in there because Stetcher or Emerson is injured or just absolutely getting torched, okay, I can understand wanting to roll the dice. But this reset over the next few days, you get everyone right, and you get everyone ready, because this is going to be one difficult ride. These are not the LA Kings of last year or the year before that or the year before that. The Kings had the best home record in the entire NHL. They have one of the best records since the Four Nations face-off. This is a team that plays lockdown defense, that had a goalie put up a Vezina caliber season in Darcy Kemper, who great change of scenery trade that worked out really well for both sides, might I add. I was a big fan of the PLD trade for Washington's perspective, but just solely based on the fact that they didn't have a whole lot going for them. And if he stunk in Washington, it didn't really matter. And it worked out well for both parties. We are going to take our second and final break on today's show. When we come back, I'm going to give you my best version of the Dwight Eisenhower D-Day speech going into the NHL playoffs on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, where you've got your team covered every day. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV 4K insert stick. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25, which I played an ungodly amount of last year, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which I also played a lot of last year, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Do you already have a console? A Fire Stick TV 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you go. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV locked on to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Thursday, the final regular season Victory Thursday of the regular season. And I can't lie. I am a sucker for a good speech. I think about all of the Coach Taylor speeches in Friday Night Lights. I think about all the little asides in Friday Night Lights. And I think about how Coach Taylor always finds ways to make guys feel seen, to make them feel important. I think about the moment in the finale of Friday Night Lights, the last episode, where he walks over to Michael B. Jordan, who's sitting in his locker before the state championship game. And all he says is, "You'll never know how proud of you I am." And just thinking about it right now, I got the goosebumps like The Rock making his entrance. It's one of those moments, you think about the Independence Day speech that Bill Pullman gives before they go to fight the aliens. You think about the real speeches. You think about JFK talking about going to the moon, the Gettysburg Address. You talk about these great moments. I mean, Pacino on Any Given Sunday, I catch myself saying that. I catch myself saying life is adding up all those inches. And that's the difference between winning and losing a lot. And I'm not the biggest rah-rah guy. I generally find a lot of that in practice to be a bit facetious, especially with how circus and carnival the landscape is right now, where everybody's a carnival barker, everyone has a solution, everybody has something you want. I am trying my best, and it's one of my real resolutions and goals this year and going forward, something I really want to maintain, is just being authentic and really trying to embrace a sense of realism and integrity and honesty as everything gets crazy. I think about the speech Rory gave after winning the Masters, completing the career Grand Slam, telling his daughter, if you have dreams, you got to fight and you can never give up for them. And sitting here, the Oilers have not had a great regular season. They were fine. I think if you were talking about the range of outcomes, if you were to lay them all out, I think this is a lower half outcome as far as the results. It would have taken a real disaster for this team to miss the playoffs just on the raw talent. And as we know in sports, raw talent is not infallible. Raw talent can get you a seat at the table. It can cover up mistakes. But once you get into that fight, once you get dragged into a real fight in the playoffs, you need more than just talent. We have seen talented teams fall apart. We have seen teams with wobbly goaltending or leaky defense or stunted offense Find ways to lose close series. You think about that Vegas-Dallas series last year, that first round series that went 7 games. That was extremely low scoring. There wasn't offense to be had. Both goalies were pretty good. And Vegas went home in 7 games. And that's a Vegas team that very much was capable of winning the Stanley Cup last year. If they get past Dallas, I could easily have seen them going past Colorado, and I easily could have seen them going past the Oilers. And as I sit here, I come back to the Herb Brooks speech in Miracle. I come back to, this is a great opportunity. That's what you have here if you're the Oilers. And one of the luxuries of having high expectations is that you are afforded some slack. When people know you're capable of great things, they will give you more grace. They will give you more margin for error. And you think about what the Oilers have been through the last few seasons, the goaltending, the defense, the Zach Hyman 50-goal season, the Zach Hyman 27-goal season, Nuge being a 100-point player, Nuge being a 50-point player. You think about the ebbs and flows and the faces who've popped in, who've popped out, the new ones, the old ones. The Oilers have every bit the capacity to make something special happen here. If you line this team's 12 best forwards and 6 best defensemen up, they are capable of beating anyone in the entire NHL. If you line them up from Colorado, okay, Nathan McKinnon and McDavid, I'll give you a push if you want to be generous. I think McDavid's a better player, but I'll give you a push if you want. You want Leon or Brock Nelson? Come on. Do you want Nuge or Charlie Coyle? I'll take Nuge. Thank you. Makar or Bouchard? Yeah, you're going to take Makar. Mackenzie Blackwood or Stuart Skinner? Mackenzie Blackwood, who's never played in a playoff game in his life, who has slightly above average numbers on a great team. I can talk myself into the Oilers being better than them. The only team that really gives me pause in the Western Conference is Vegas. And that's purely because I saw Jack Eichel be the best player for Team USA in the Four Nations back in February. And as we sit here, I keep coming back to the idea of opportunity and missing opportunities. And that's really where I'm at now. The Oilers have afforded themselves the opportunity to pursue a Stanley Cup again. They have been through the wars. They have made multiple conference finals. They have made a Stanley Cup final. They are the oldest average age roster in the NHL. They do not have a pipeline. They do not have blue chip prospects. They do not have a particularly clear future. They have to figure out what the next iteration of the team is going to look like. There is going to be further financial and salary cap chicanery to make this all work. Maintaining contender status is the hardest thing to do in professional sports, especially in hockey with the low salary cap ceiling and with the price controls and when players can hit unrestricted free agency, the types of players that typically reach unrestricted free agency. My goal, if I am on this team or if I am Chris Knobloch talking to this team, is making them understand how perilous this all is. It's really easy for expectations to become, I don't want to say moot, but it's really easy for expectations to just become the new normal. And even with high expectations, you can be a consistently high achiever. Just because Ohtani has high expectations every year and he hits 45, 50 home runs doesn't mean he doesn't feel the weight of those expectations. He's just that good. The Oilers have not been just that good this year. They have a great opportunity before them, and I think they are capable of something really special this year, but it is going to take something special out of them. They are going to need to find a gear and a level they have not found in 2.5, 3 months now. And they're going to be asking guys who haven't played a lot of hockey in the last month and because of injuries to really be able to dial it in and find where they need to go. But the parting thought I will leave you with, you look at the Bruins right now, you look at the Rangers right now. It doesn't take a lot going wrong to end up in that boat. It does not take a lot. And this is a sliding doors moment for this group. This is the last time you will have Connor Leon and Evan Bouchard on cost reasonable contracts in relation to the salary cap. Connor and Leon are always going to be worth what they're paid, if not more, because the salary cap in the NHL is so low, and the fact there's a maximum cap hit in the NHL is silly. But that will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much for being a part of the journey during the regular season. I hope you are ready for what I hope is a very long and successful playoff run. But that will do it for today's show. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the brand spanking new Locked On NHL Game Night, covering every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on the Locked On NHL YouTube feed or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I will talk to you guys tomorrow with Eddie Garcia for a full-throated round one preview. Oilers Kings Part 4.